Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to another video. My name is Evan Schneider and I'm a professional colorist in Los Angeles. And today I want to introduce you to my new LUT pack, the Asteroid City LUT pack. So if you haven't seen the trailer yet for Asteroid City, definitely make sure to go check that out and then come back to this video so you get an idea for what I'm talking about and the kind of colors that you experience when you watch it. Now, I've noticed that this color grade really has a very polarizing effect. Some people love it and some people absolutely hate it, but I think we can all agree that this is typical Wes Anderson. I'm sure that whoever colored it from Company 3 was making Wes Anderson very happy when they worked with him doing this grade, because it is just, again, already, we haven't even seen the movie yet, but just from the trailer, it's already an iconic color grade. So the instant I saw the trailer, I knew that I just had to try to get this same look with digital footage. Now, on the trailer, it actually says that it was shot on Kodak film. And so I think that that was doing a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of the color grade. And I think it's going to take a little bit more work for us to make digital footage look like what they achieved, because we're not starting with the same base, the film stock, which is already shifting the colors and creating a unique look. But like I said, when I saw the trailer, I knew that I had to try it out. I just thought it was so unique, and I saw kind of little characteristics in the trailer that I kind of recognized from different tools I've used to create looks myself. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about what makes the Asteroid City trailer look so unique. And then I'm going to talk about how I created this LUT pack and the different tools I used. And then I'm going to demo some of the LUTs on other digital footage that I used to create it and kind of show you how they work in real world scenarios on your own footage. I'm extremely excited about this LUT pack. I feel like it's one of the most unique and one of the most stylized LUT packs I've made. But at the same time, it actually doesn't destroy your footage. It pushes it into this color palette without ruining the colors, without introducing a lot of color noise. And I've used very advanced look development techniques to make sure that the fidelity of the image is preserved while still creating a very stylized and specific look. So I have the trailer loaded up here in DaVinci Resolve because part of it is watching the trailer and looking at the colors, but to get a more scientific view of the image, we're going to view it through some scopes. So as I scroll through here, you can see, like on this shot, pretty much throughout the board, if you look at the vector scope here, the entire film is kind of sitting in the southwest quadrant. So this is the skin tone line right here. And so everything is lying to the left and below the skin tone line, which means that the skin tones are pushing a little bit yellow. But we can also see here that they're following kind of the teal orange line, which is a common thing that colorists and cinematographers do to create natural looking color contrast, is to offset the skin tones with blue tones. So like in this shot here, we're really seeing the sand, the skin, the rocks here, and then we have the really blue sky, but then we also have shadows that kind of push into the blue tones. It's interesting because when you first watch this trailer, you kind of think this must be some sort of low contrast look. But when you bring it into the scopes, you kind of realize that it's actually not really low contrast. Like in this shot, for example, we're using most of the range of the signal. However, the bulk of the range is sitting in kind of the mid-tone area. So from 20% to like 70 or 80%. And you can see that here in the waveform. I have this set to the luminance and colorizing. And you can see that we have a little bit of shadow detail, but most of the image is sitting in the midtones. And that's reflected here where you can see their hair is pushing blue. And as I scroll through here, you can see the highlighted zones. So the red channel is taking up most of the signal, followed by the green channel, which is taking up a little bit less, and then the blue channel, which is taking up the least. And so scrolling through here, you can see that the blues are quite lifted and the reds are getting pretty low on the parade. You can see that skin tones here are pushing very, very saturated red. And then the sky is pushing very saturated teal or cyan on the vector scope. So yeah, as I watched this, I was thinking, man, I have to figure out a way to create some sort of technique that no matter what is in the shot, it pushes everything into this kind of area, but keeps everything aligned along the teal and orange separation line. Anywhere where there's some intense red, like you can see in lipstick in different scenes, like in this one too, it really just pops. It makes such a huge difference, especially in like this shot. Her dress, her lips, they're pushing extremely red. You can see on the vector scope, this is like her dress and her lips. They're just pushing all the way up really far. But the other things I noticed is that the roll-off in the highlights is very, very soft. So if you go to like this shot, for example, the clouds are almost kind of disappearing into the highlights. And you can see on the parade scopes here that the highlights are quite compressed and they don't really go above 80 or 85% anywhere. If you scroll through, like even in this shot, we have pretty compressed highlights. Things are very smooth in the highlight roll off. You can see that compression happening here at the top and here over here. The other thing is the green tones. I wanted to make sure that I followed this hue for the green tones, which are pushing actually kind of a cool green, which just even further pushes the color contrast of the scene, because in normal life, if this was very warm, deserty, and a normal color grade, the green tones would actually probably push a little bit more yellow, like a warmer green. But in this grade, to create more color separation and contrast, the greens are pushed towards more of a blue cyan tone, while the sand is very warm, teal. You know, you kind of get the picture of what I'm talking about. Yeah, it's just kind of like pastel-y. I would describe it as like low contrast, high saturation, very pastel, but very saturated. And I kind of agree with the people who say like it kind of feels similar to what it feels like to spend all day outside in the desert. It's also interesting to note that the aspect ratio changes right here. Like super interesting. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on here besides the color. A big part of it too is like wardrobe, blocking, you know, set design, all of that stuff. Like it all contributes to the color. But in this video, we're just going to be talking about the actual color grade. So one thing I did when I was trying to recreate the look and these LUTs is I actually took frame grabs from different frames throughout the trailer so I could put them in this graph here and see everything from kind of an overall view. So as I was creating the looks, I would have everything pulled up here, and then I would kind of go through and like go through each shot. And you can see like in the top left, you can see this is my shot up here. And so I would adjust the colors based on what's happening in my frame, and I would try to match it as close as possible, depending on what attribute I was working with. This is kind of a cool like A/B. So you can see like in this one, I was really trying to match the color of these rocks here to these and the color of the sand. I also noticed that the highlights push a tiny bit green as they're going up in luminance. And you can see this red tone. This is just like screaming RGB mixer and messing with the matrix transform functions. So that was one thing that I really wanted to play with. So you can see here, I'm kind of showing you behind the scenes, but this is the actual node tree for the look for the LUT. And basically what I have, this color palette is just a OFX in Resolve that I turn on and off, so I can kind of see what's going on with the color palette. But basically this is the DNA of the look. And then all of these are kind of different variations that I played with as I was creating the looks. And pretty much each one of these nodes ended up as a separate LUT in the LUT pack. So basically you have the base look, and then you have different variations. I have one with balanced shadows, a desaturated, different color balances, you know, a lot of different variations, because since this is such a strong look, a lot of times, like if you apply it to your footage and it's not balanced correctly or whatever, you're not going to get what you're actually looking for. The first thing I started off with was a color matrix. And if you don't know what a color matrix is, it's down in the RGB mixer. You're kind of messing with the RGB output. And I don't want to go into too much detail here because it just gets very confusing. But if I open the base LUT in Lattice, which is a LUT software from a company called Video Village, where you can do a lot of different types of things with the LUTs. If I go over here to the cube, you can actually see what the LUT is actually doing to the cube and how it's distorting it. So originally this cube would fit the bounds and it would just be a normal cube, but now it's kind of warped, and I've done a bunch of different things to it that have made it this shape. You can kind of see like, oh, here we go. So this is before and this is after. So you can see how it's really warping it in. And this is kind of also what happens when you adjust the intensity of the LUT, is you're kind of getting back to normal. This is just a regular cube. And then this is what the LUT is doing. So it's really like, if you look at it maybe from the top, it's really compressing it into this kind of axis. This is like the teal orange axis. So like these would be the shadows, these would be the highlights, but you can see that it's pushing, it's kind of squeezing in all of the tones on the sides, so that, but kind of keeping the shadows here. So yeah, this is kind of a really interesting tool to see what's happening with your LUTs, but I just wanted to show you. And so when you're using the RGB mixer and when you're actually using it in YUV mode on the node, you can kind of visualize in your head what you're doing to the actual cube. But the main like DNA and intensity of this look is coming from adjusting the matrix and the RGB mixer. I have like some curves adjustments, kind of adjusting different highlights, shadows, kind of adjusting the hue versus hue, hue versus sat, like bringing down the reds. A lot of it was just trying to bring the reds under control. And then another matrix to kind of do stuff, curves, cleaning up, adjusting the whites, reds, stuff like that, using the color warper a little bit. Also in my power grade of the LUT, I've also got like a fun little halation node, and then I also have a grain node that we can play with. So yeah, I was just kind of testing it out and trying to get the full feel of the look as I was creating this node structure. Okay, so now that you've kind of seen under the hood of how I developed the LUT and the different characteristics that I was trying to achieve, let's just play with the LUTs on some different footage, and you can see how they affect the footage and kind of what I'm starting with and what I'm ending up with. So the node structure is going to be actually pretty basic when you're working with the LUTs. And if you're working in Premiere, you can just think of these as different layers of the Lumetri, or a combination of using the clip and an adjustment layer. But in Resolve, I'm just going to apply the base look to this footage. And you can see that it is pushing the vector scope into kind of the same range as what we're seeing in the trailer. And I can also play with the other looks. This is a desaturated version. This is a high contrast. This is a neutral shadows version. And then we've also got some post-LUT versions. So basically what this means is if you want to separate the two kind of adjustments, so I could use the base and then I could create a new node and add the post-LUT less red, and that kind of brings back the red channel. Or I could do shadow balance. That kind of brings the shadows out of the bluish tone and kind of neutralizes them a little bit. So you can play with those if you want. And then we've got a bunch of different variations. This one kind of, if you look at the sky, it kind of makes the sky a little more neutral. Here's a warmer, less contrast. So it really depends on what source footage you're using. But I tried to include a lot of different options to make sure you get something that you like on the footage. So like this one, you can see the highlights are pushing a little bit green. And on this shot, the warm highlights might look a little bit better. The other thing you can do is adjust the intensity of the LUT a little bit. So if you don't want it to look as crazy, but you still want a bit of that teal orangeness, you can just go in and adjust the key output or the intensity slider in Premiere or Final Cut, and you'll be good to go. So I'm going to reset that to 100%. And if I go to another shot, these are kind of the clips that I used to develop the looks. And they look, pretty simple at first. Like this one is like a simple shot. But if you go to your parade, you can see like our clouds are shooting pretty high up on the parade scopes. And we're actually pushing a little bit cooler with this shot. So if we apply the base look, you can see that we have the same like compressed highlights, really smooth highlight roll off in this channel. And if we go to our vector scope, you can see that we're pushing into this teal orange warmer territory, the same as Asteroid City. So we can play with the different looks here, see which one works best with the footage. So yeah, I actually think the base looks pretty good, maybe with neutral shadows, but it kind of is up to you to, decide what looks best. Also, if you want to adjust the LUT a little bit, you can create a node before the LUT node, and you can adjust the primaries. So you can kind of adjust what's going into it if you want. You can adjust exposure, all of that stuff. You can even cool it down. So like if you cool it down and stuff, you can really see like what it's doing to the footage. And you can get some kind of crazy looks if you adjust the input into the LUT. You can also like bring down the saturation, make like more of a desaturated look, or you can just pump it really high. If you want to adjust the actual look, you can make a node after, and you can desaturate it, or you can make the post LUT a little bit warmer. Another example I wanted to show you is just kind of how it looks with the highlights like in the sun here, blown out highlights. Because of the really smooth highlight roll off, we're kind of bringing down those highlights, but we're kind of hiding this weird overexposed looking area. And you can kind of see like it's a little bit more hidden than you would notice it before. So that's kind of an added benefit of the actual look, is like if you're overexposing stuff, it actually kind of works out pretty well. And another thing I wanted to show you is if I zoom in really far here, like you can see how clean the look is. Like in the sky, usually if we like use curves and hue versus hue and all that stuff, you would see a lot of crazy like introduced noise into the footage. But since we're adjusting the matrix and using the RGB mixer, we've ended up with a really clean looking LUT that, like I said, it isn't too harsh on the footage, but it's introducing very extreme style to it. Let's go to this one. This one pushing a little more like magenta. But yeah, you can see like in these skin tones, I really like this example because you can see like under her arms or in her neck here or around her hair, like it's a very pleasing red tone, and it's not desaturating. It's actually almost like very luminous skin tones. And like I said, like if you want to bring it all the way down and use it kind of as just a polishing thing, you can bring it down and kind of adjust it to a point where you feel like it works really well. So these clips are pretty incredible because like they already have like a teal and orange kind of style. Like they're already pushing on that line. But when we apply the base look, it just like brings it out of this world. And I love it. I'm going to create a node before to adjust the exposure a little bit. And I'm going to go to the HDR wheels. I'm just going to bring the global exposure down and maybe go back here, bring down the saturation a bit. So yeah, like look at these skin tones under here. Like they're just insane in a really good way. So I just love this. Like, this is before and this is after, and it's like, it's just a insane look, and I love it. It's like very filmic, very airy, very saturated, but it just brings in so much emotion into the image. And like, if I just apply the grade and then go back to HDR wheels, and we'll just adjust the exposure. I'm using the HDR exposure because it has like a little bit of highlight and shadow roll off built in rather than using the offset. So that's why I'm using HDR. But we can go in here, and then maybe we'll warm it up a little bit. You know, like, the sky is the limit with this. Like, as we warm it up, we're getting rid of those blue tones, but even here, like, we could warm it up quite a bit, and then we could create a new node after, bring down the saturation. Now we have almost like a monotone look, but it's just making those skin tones look so like luminous. And I keep saying the word luminous, but I really think that that's true. It's just like a really intense emotion, and like, it's a little bit low contrast, as you can see in the scopes, but we're not like in the log territory. Let's bring this up, and we'll just apply this grade over here. And like, instantly we have such a unique look. You can even take this off. Let's just reset these and see what it looks like. So we'll do the base, and like, instantly you've got like this insane blue sky, really nice skin tones. And like, I haven't even done anything, and we're already, the skin pops and the subject just kind of like comes out of nowhere in like kind of a 3D way. If you were doing this with just the LUTs, you can apply the LUT and then apply the face refinement after the LUT, do the same adjustment. We have our color palette here, which is really cool. And then like, if you wanted to apply halation and grain, now we're like getting pretty crazy. But, you know, it's a pretty unique look. Let's go over here. You know, like, there's a lot of flexibility is what I'm saying with these LUTs. So here's another one. Let's just apply maybe the neutral shadow version or the warm highlights, kind of like that one. And we'll make a new node before, bring down the exposure a little bit. And boom, we have a really nice look. And you can see that it's pushing into the same territory as Asteroid City. We're down in this quadrant. We're spanning the teal orange line. So it's looking really nice. If you want to purchase these LUTs, you can check them out at my website, lutcompany.com. And if you do end up picking them up, let me know, because I want to see what you're creating with these. I'm super excited about this LUT pack. You know, I'm proud of every LUT pack that I've created on there, but this one I felt just such a strong direction and a strong motivation to kind of create this look and figure out what's going on underneath the hood. And I hope this video helped you kind of understand the different techniques I use to create this, gives you more confidence in the LUTs, but also just to understand look creation and how kind of crazy and scientific it gets, but also artistic at the same time. And I think in these days, like in film, you think you've really seen it all in terms of looks and color. And a lot of us are trying to emulate old looks and old film stocks and stuff like that. But then it's just exciting to me to kind of feel like this comes out of the blue and you're just like, wow, this is incredibly unique. And it's just cool to see the boundaries being pushed even more. Some people love it. Some people hate it. Personally, I love it. And that's why I created this LUT pack. And I want other people to be able to play with it and kind of see what it can do on their footage. So yeah, let me know if you pick it up. I sell other LUTs, and I also sell a Super 8 emulation on lutcompany.com. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments. I try to reply to as many as I possibly can. And thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.